As part of the Dev Talks episode posted today, a brand new one, we've got more details on the upcoming Panzerstorm map. This is the map coming as part of the first chapter of the Tides of War, just after the main launch of Battlefield 5. There's a few more notes as well, but we're learning a lot more about Battlefield 5 just before the launch. As well as information about the Panzerstorm map, I've got some information about the practice range coming to Battlefield 5, and a look at a new weapon coming in the first chapter of the Tides of War as well. But let's start with Panzerstorm. This clip is all we have. That's literally it. But the devs in the video discuss the map a little bit more, and this is where we get our first bit of information. Panzerstorm is a map that DICE intends to fill a small gap with in the base game map pool. They didn't feel they had a focused enough ground vehicle map, one that introduced enough tanks onto it. Now, Hamada certainly offers a good amount of ground combat, but Panzerstorm will focus heavily on it. This is DICE's first attempt at properly accentuating an element of the gameplay that Battlefield 5 offers, rather than trying to balance multiple different options. So this is going to be a ground vehicle heavy map. At the moment, DICE has set the map up with 7 different vehicle slots per team. That's 14 vehicles in total, which is a pretty huge amount, I've got to say. Thinking back, I can't actually remember the number of vehicle spawns that the Battlefield 4 map Silk Road had, but that was the last huge vehicle-focused map that I can remember, and with 7 on each team, vehicles are going to be everywhere you look on Panzerstorm. Now, David Sirlin said they're currently pushing the game engine at having 7 vehicles on each team, those big ground vehicles that is, and at this point, this is where they want to land. But I know the team is going to be pushing more in the future, so that number could change. The terrain deformation system on the map is going to help infantry players apparently. David Sirlin stated that with terrain deformation, tank shells will create these foxholes in the ground for infantry soldiers to hide in. The map features big rolling hills that tanks can use as cover to hide behind, moving backwards and forwards, exposing themselves and then covering up again, but infantry soldiers are going to stand out quite a bit more, and they're not going to have as much of a chance in more open areas. So they need to think a little bit smarter and use the lasting damage that the tanks cause to stay alive. And of course, the Panzerstorm map is a large one, I think we all assume that, with 7 vehicles per team, but as part of the Tides of War, this will be a way for DICE to assess how players take on the map, what they end up doing with it, and what patterns emerge, and then they'll be able to use that information moving forwards in the Tides of War for other maps they end up creating. Right now, that's all the information we have on the Panzerstorm map, but we do know that it will be coming out in the first chapter, called Overture, between December 2018 and January 2019, just after the launch of Battlefield 5. Moving on now to the new weapon that was shown off by the dev team. This is the Vickers K machine gun, and it's one of the few weapons that DICE will be dropping in the Overture chapter of the Tides of War. Now this, in Battlefield 5, will be classed as an MMG, a medium machine gun, and it will join the MG42 and the MG34 in the support class. It will feature a 60-round top drum magazine as stock, but that can be upgraded to a higher capacity using the specialization system, but the gun will not be able to ADS in the same way that LMGs can. This is a trait shared with the MG42 and the MG34, where if you do want to aim down sights, you need to deploy the bipod. This was actually a weapon we saw in the Gamescom trailer back in August, and it was missing from the list of launch weapons. Now we know it's dropping in the first chapter of the Tides of War, again, just after the launch of Battlefield 5. Next up, the practice range. Just like Panzerstorm, this is all the footage we're going to see of it, but it's going to follow in the footsteps of the Battlefield 4 implementation, and it's going to offer us a testing ground, a mess-about location for anyone to simply try things without the fear of being shot by any one of the 32 opponents on the enemy team. Now, it's going to be set on the Hamada map from multiplayer, which is the biggest map the game is shipping with, and will feature a load of tools for players to use, use and experiment with. So if you want to test out a new gun without being in a live multiplayer match whilst doing that, the practice range is here for you. The same goes for vehicles. If you want to drive one around just to try something out, you can do that here without the fear of annoying friendly players because you did something wrong during an actual match of Battlefield 5. And again, this will also be launching in the Overture chapter of the Tides of War just after the main game launches. And lastly, here I have a small clip taken from Natalie X's Twitter account. She is the UX UI designer for Battlefield 5, and she's shown off a change to revive icons to help players understand what a downed player is actually doing. Feedback from the open beta was that the icons weren't quite clear enough. So first of all, if the icon is static, the player is not touching either the bleed out or call for help buttons. If the icon is larger and flashing, the player is holding down the call for help button. They want to be revived, so go and try and revive them. If the icon is smaller and translucent, the player is skipping the revive and they're choosing to bleed out. And as was the case in Battlefield 1, now the same thing is happening in Battlefield 5. If you spot a downed teammate, your name will appear in the HUD above other nearby medics to let that player know that you are on your way to them. So that's a few small updates here, but I think each of them is actually quite important. We've got several more videos coming up over the next week discussing some points around Battlefield 5. Before the launch comes around, we are just about 2 weeks away now, so things really are hotting up, and I'll do my best to get a video out for you every single day this week. Thank you very much for watching, leave your thoughts down below, and until next time, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.